Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Hello Cannot podcast. So today is going to be a rather interesting topic. This is going back to my adulting series of 101. So for today, we'll be talking about getting your first job. And today's topic is going to be a rather long one. So hopefully you guys have your coffee, your tea right next to you. And then let's begin. So, getting your first job, this is almost equivalent to, let's say, if you've just graduated, whether it's coming from you're coming from your college, your university, or just right after high school. I understand the economic situation for everyone is very different. So there might be times where you actually need to drop out of school earlier just to get a job and to support yourself and your family. Basically, this is the first time in your life where you've actually needed to find a full-time job. You're ready to move on to your next stage of life, and that's basically working. So you'll be working, and you'll be officially getting your first real job. So to start off, right, the best advice I would give is to take your time. Like really take your time. That's because I believe landing a job is a process that usually takes months, and for a good reason too, right? If you're trying to get a job instantly, you never know whether that job is suitable for you or not. And you may not even know if it's suitable to fit your passion or even the goals that you're trying to achieve. So take some time, listen to what I'll be sharing on my podcast, and hopefully it will open up your eyes and give you some suggestions as well. Okay. Now, getting a job, it varies very differently depending on what is your profession, what is the profession that you're seeking for. There are some jobs that have a much more linear path, like let's say being a doctor, a lawyer, a police officer, and so forth, right? These jobs, they have a fixed pathway, only comprises around 20% of all the jobs out there. So that means that there's around 80% of jobs which does not have a linear path. Now, I'm not saying that there are any problems if you're very passionate about being a doctor or a lawyer, and if you're very determined to pursue that career pathway, right? In fact, I'll be very envious of you because you already know what you want. But sadly, for the rest of us, we don't have that kind of confirmation. And those are the people that I will be targeting for today's podcast episode, right? So let's talk about these people who have not figured out what they want to do for their first job. And let's talk about what are the right questions to ask before, trying to land your first job. So with this in mind, let me just share with you 5 questions that hopefully can guide you along the way to get you to a better understanding of what you should be looking out for. Let's go. All right, question 1. What do you want to achieve? So for a lot of people out there, leaving their educational institution is just step 1 into the unknown, right? There are so many jobs out there, more than what you can imagine, right? You can be a diver installing oil rigs out in the sea. You can choose to be an astronaut. There are so many options. Whatever you can think of, there's probably a job for it, right? But before we actually get there, it's very important, I would say, to figure out what is it that you want to achieve. What is it that you're passionate about? And also, how do you want to achieve it? So some people, maybe what they want to do is they want to become famous. Some want to choose to do it for the greater good, right? As an example, Thomas Edison, he failed thousands of times, right, before he created the first light bulb. Another example would be like the Wright brothers, not the wrong brothers, but the Wright brothers. They allowed man to conquer the sky with their first airplane. So what I'm saying here is that knowing what you want to achieve is essential, right? And to actually help you figure out your goal, I would recommend picking up this book by Simon Sinek called Start With Why. So this book is basically amazing in helping you, guide you to figure out what you're passionate about and what is important for you, right? Part of the suggestions by Simon is that you need to look into previous experiences in your life. The ones that are very much, very particularly memorable, and the ones that actually leave a very lasting impression in you. Those are the type of memories that really trigger you, and I think deep down inside there's a hidden agenda on something that you really care about. So pick up this book, go through it one by one, and sooner or later you'll figure out what is it you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve, and why you want to achieve it that way. Okay, and then we'll move on to question number 2. Which job positions can help you with your achievements or what you're looking out for? So this question, I think it's rather obvious, but the answer is not necessarily obvious. Okay, let me explain why. So if you've actually done the start with why recommendation from question number 1, you know what you're going for. So you have your goals now, right? And the next step is to figure out how to execute it. So it's very vague, right? Let's say if you love comedy, you love making people laugh, there are multiple career pathways that you can choose to go. You can consider being a stand-up comedian, or you can even look towards writing scripts for movies or sitcoms. And there are just so many other ways that you can make people laugh. And what I'm trying to suggest here is that there might be multiple ways getting around the goal, and you need to figure out which one you're comfortable with or which one you're willing to settle for. And that's why you need to consider spending more time, right? Maybe even months, to figure out what's out in the market out there. There are 2 things that you can look for. The first thing, what are the job positions or the type of career pathways that you can choose to achieve your goals? And the second thing would be, if there isn't one like this, can I start it myself, right? And you can't just choose this on a whim. There needs to be enough time for you to figure this out, to plan it out, and to see whether it's feasible based on your current conditions and your financial status, right? And let's say even once you figure all of these things out, let's say what the right career pathway it is. Let's say you want to be a comedian or a stand-up comedy. The next thing is to look towards a company or corporations out there, that can provide you with the position and the responsibilities that you want. And of course, if all else fails, there's no right place to go to. You can always take the path of freelancing. And in essence, what you're trying to achieve, that is an itch that needs to be scratched, right? And you need to figure out what are the real ways to satisfy that itch. And it may come at the cost of time and a lot of research and analysis. So keep it up. Don't give up hope along the way. And hopefully you'll be able to find something that is the most suitable position, career pathway of your choice. Now I'm going to move on into the next question, which is, I think it's going to be a rather long one. And that would be, what to fill in your resume or CV. So yeah, talking about this resume or CV, what I've seen out there is that there are people who have not been exposed to a resume or a CV, or they may not even know what it is. Basically, a resume or CV is like a piece of personal information that contains some of your personal details, some of your working experiences and history. And it's basically the filter conditions that allows people to pick and choose from a list of applicants to see which ones they want to hire and which ones they want to interview, right? So for people who have not been exposed to resumes or CVs, I highly recommend you to just Google it up. It's a basic life skill that's not taught in school, and it's a basic requirement to entering most, I would say most corporations or companies out there, or even just building your own profile for freelancing work, okay? And this is one, I still think that this is one easily the most subjective topic, right? Because once you have your resume or CV, you're submitting this to HR personnel or potential customers, right? They basically have their own personal criteria, personal things that they look for in each of the resumes. So it's very, very different. Even 2 HR employees from the same company could have 2 different type of requirements that they're looking for. So each time you submit your resume or CV, you're basically hoping for 2 things, right? The first thing is that whatever you have filled up in your resume is exactly what the person or the company is looking for, and that will just make things easier, right? It'll make the process much more smoother. And there are a a lot of things that you can play around in your resume that can tailor it, make it more, or I would say perfect for the right scenarios. But let me just quickly talk about the second point before I elaborate on the first point. So the second point, basically whatever you're hoping for in this second point is fully, completely based on your luck. There is very little that you can do to change, overturn this, but essentially what you're hoping for is that whoever is reviewing your documents is having a good day. There is such a thing which I call shit luck, because there will be times when some from the HR perhaps, right? He or she is having the perfect resume in their hands, but they rejected that person because the said employer or customer was just having a bad day or a shitty day. Humans are very prone to emotions, and these emotions basically can be carried out towards the people that we're speaking to, interacting with, and even sometimes towards the work that we're performing, right? It's very hard to deny that and to avoid emotions from affecting our work. So yeah, but I do believe that there is one way to quickly tackle this problem, and that would be trying to reach them as early in the day as possible. This is important because you want to catch them right when they start their work, or probably just before when they are starting their work. This is very, very critical, because as the day goes on, the longer you wait, the longer the time you take, your HR employer or basically your potential customer could have some bad things happening to him or her, and this will lead to them having a very rough or even a bad, horrible day. And those are the worst times for them to review your resume. So I can't say that once you've submitted, let's say your resume in the early morning, they'll definitely read it right after you send it. So there will be times where there's a backlog of resumes that they're looking into, and perhaps when they look at your email, you would be placed somewhere in the end of the pile. And when they get to your resume, it's probably afternoon, and that's really dependent on your luck, right? So after submission, you're basically at their mercy. Now, let's go back to tackling the first point, which is having the perfect resume. Now, the perfect resume should contain all the right information based on your personal experience and skills. And I would say that for resumes, there should be three main categories within each resume. So you will have your personal details, your working experience, and lastly, maybe any types of additional certification or skills that are worth mentioning. So starting off with the personal details, you can include your name, your date of birth, contact details like maybe your phone number and email. Just keep it simple, bare minimum. Maybe if you're trying to add more information which you think is beneficial for you, just stop and think about it again. So I understand that there are people who love to include their photos and pictures, make it available in their resumes, right? I won't really recommend it, because sometimes it can just lead to a conscious or a subconscious biasness by the reviewer. Although I won't lie, if you're handsome or if you're quite pretty or beautiful, it will give you that slight advantage. But if the reviewer is trying to hire you or give you the chance of an interview based on your looks, then unless you're looking for a modeling career, that's usually not the right way, right, to recruit someone. And I think, right, ideally, the color of your skin should play no role and no part whatsoever in determining if you're suitable for the job or eligible for the right position. So other aspects such as religion or marital status should also be left out. I would recommend adding nationality only when you think it's required, because certain companies have hiring policies based on a percentage of local versus expatriates, right? Yeah, so maybe just if you need to customize, just make sure you think twice about what you're trying to add and whether that will affect the people that are reviewing your profile. Now, we move on to the work experience section. So you should always start off in chronological order. Basically, you sort it based on your latest working experience and you slowly climb down as the time goes backwards. You should always start by filling up the name of the company or project that you have worked on before, and also include the respective timeline or duration. So for instance, I'm just going to use John Doe as an example. In John's resume, he fills up the company PwC as part of his previous internship program. And he also doesn't forget to add the duration worked in PwC. And that's from December 2020 to February 2021, which is 3 months worth of internship. So once you have the company mentioned and the duration, the next thing that you want to fill in would be your responsibilities and your achievements as bullet points, right? There are a lot of people that would like to list down as many points as they can and even exaggerate a lot of this information. And I think there are just many ways to fine-tune all of these points. It's okay if you're proud of something that you've achieved or you've done and you want to mention it in your bullet points. But what I would suggest on top of that is to give numbers wherever you can. For instance, right, quote unquote, implemented automation which increases efficiency by 30% and reduces downtime by 50%. Or even something like quote unquote, responsible for identifying problems with equipment during early stages, saving $10 million annually. Or you could also mention that, let's say you were the employee of the month in a retail job and you were the person who had the highest sales during that month. So all of these numbers, they're very, very good. They show a form of statistics to your reviewers and they love that, because these are really eye-capturing points that will leave a very good and lasting impression on them. And perhaps it may also set you apart from the other applicants. Right, so of course you need to milk any benefit, any advantage that you can get. Now, of course, there are basic things that I did not mention here, which is stuff like make sure your bullet points are tidied up, they're aligned to the same line, and also your fonts, they're either Arial or Times New Roman, and they're of a readable size. And for fresh grads that have limited experience, try to keep it within one page if possible, so that it's easier for any reviewers to just scan through the entire thing without feeling tired or fatigued. Okay, now let's move on to the last section. Let's talk about, or let's try to highlight any additional skills or certifications you may have. So perhaps you previously attended a course with Google Analytics and you got your certification with Google. Make sure to include that, whenever it is relevant to the position or the job that you're applying for, right? All of these relevant skills or knowledge should be included, I would say. But the key word here, please remember, is the word relevant. So let's say if you're applying for a linguistic job, a translator, for instance, you should include the languages that you know, as well as the proficiency or the level of mastery for each language. All of this information are basically booster points that will help you in terms of setting you apart, making you different from the rest of the applications. Okay? But until today, there's still one thing that I cannot figure out the answer to. Hopefully, if any of you people know, or if anybody from HR listens to my podcast, if you're looking for fresh grads, right? If they fill in they're proficient with Microsoft Word, Excel, or even Microsoft PowerPoint, or maybe even stuff like Photoshop, are those things that you think are actually beneficial? Should it be known, right, that everyone should have skills in handling this kind of softwares or applications? Please leave comments if you think that these are already well-known applications and everyone should just have a basic mastery skill of these softwares. And basically that would mean adding all of this Microsoft PowerPoint, Word, Excel just gives no additional benefit when you add it into your resume. Now, for students, right, please do not forget to also add, I'm sure you've joined clubs, organizations within your schools or universities. Please add them in, and if you have, if you were in any specific positions, throw them as much as you can into your resume, because what it shows is that this person is not only capable of studying, getting good grades, right? They might also be skilled in various other areas. Like I do know, or I've spoken with people from the HR, some of them are even my friends, and they mentioned that, let's say if we have two applicants, one of them has amazing grades but has nothing else to show for, no other skills, versus someone who has decent grades, right? But apart from having decent grades, they have other skills, like let's say they were the head or the president of the debate club, as well at the same time they could be joining multiple types of sport competitions, right? The second applicant actually stands out more than the first one and is more likely to get to the next round for interview. And the main reason is that the second person has more exposure, and that gives them the extra benefit or the extra advantage of thinking out of the box. Unless they're trying to recruit a mindless drone to fill in, to just do work without thinking. Okay, so with all of this information, now you have your resume. Your resume is complete. Oh, wait, if you're planning to send a cover letter, remember to not go crazy talking about your goals and dreams. Don't try to be too creative, just keep it simple and short. A cover letter is basically a formal letter, a formal application request that is sent from your side to just initiate the conversation in a formal manner, right? Look, this is the most amazing cover letter that I've ever seen. Said no one ever from HR. Okay. Oh yes, and one more thing. Please ensure that you have just create a proper email account before sending your cover letter or your resume. Do not use emails like ilove69@gmail.com. That just won't fly, I guarantee you. I don't even think that will fly if you're applying for any jobs in the pornographic industry. Of course, if there are any HR personnel from the pornographic industry, please feel free to prove me wrong. Alright, now to just go a little bit further, you can add references. So references basically are names of people that you've worked with or worked under, or people who know you, okay? And by adding references, this gives your reviewers, your HR personnel, to confirm what kind of person you are, and they may just want to do a quick check on your personality or characteristics, okay? So before you add these references, make sure that you have already spoken to them. You're making them aware of this role that you're playing as your reference. I think it's a very good opportunity as well to just quickly catch up with your references to discuss quickly on what feedbacks that they may have for you. So you need to get that aligned as soon as possible before anyone calls up your references. Okay, and that pretty much wraps up the third question number 3. So before I move on to question number 4, your resume is done. Please just remember to proofread your entire resume. The grammar and the tone of the resume can make or break the outcome. Okay, now let's look into question number 4. What are the best hiring periods? This is basically a question of demand and supply, right? Imagine if you're looking for a job as a fruit picker or someone who is working in the vineyards. These are basically seasonal jobs, because for countries that have 4 seasons, spring and summer is usually the best time for their produce, right? And for people who are preparing to offer this kind of jobs, they usually offer it in late winter or early spring. So if you're looking for this kind of jobs, seasonal jobs, you always have to choose the right time for recruitment, or the right time when they're actually looking to hire people. Now, the same also goes for corporations, right? I would say, let's say if you're looking into the auditing industry, there will be certain peak periods and certain downtimes for the company. And what you want to do is just make sure you have your resume ready for the peak periods that are about to come. And just right before the peak periods, they will definitely open up the job vacancies, and you want to submit as many companies as you want during that time. And another way that you can do is always look into the main website of these big giant corporations. Usually just right before their peak periods, they would start sharing all of these vacancies. Some of the companies even put their job vacancies into hiring websites like monster.com. So make sure you know what are the platforms that these corporations are using, and you can just quickly refresh maybe on a daily basis to see what they have available. Only if you've figured out what you want to do, and that is the company that allows you to do what you want to do. Okay. If you really want to go the distance, you can also call or just make a quick visit to the company to ask on what are their potential positions that are open, right? But now it's just not the best time because COVID-19 is here. Just give them a call or a ring, okay? Just remember to plan before the peak hiring periods. Okay, and that brings us to our last question, the 5th question. Would you be open to temporary jobs or just networking? So whether you're at the stage of finding what you want to achieve, or if you're just waiting for the peak hiring periods, right? I would actually recommend trying temporary or even part-time jobs like internships, any kind of mini projects that you can get your hands on. Because if you can roughly get into those kind of jobs, right, those temporary jobs, you may just potentially experience what you'll be getting once you land the job that you wanted. So using the same example of auditing, there are internships in the audit firms, and if you go for any internships, you realize what the lifestyle is like, and that could make or break on your decision on joining an audit firm. So these are just tips, hints, and tricks, right, that allows you to foresee what is going to come your way. Now, let's talk about networking. Basically, everything that boils down in working life, right, is the connections that you make, because sometimes these connections that you make will carry you a very long way into your as you get older, right, as you're switching jobs, or if you're moving on to greener pastures of the working industry. So networking here is very important on multiple levels. So you can actually first start networking by joining social media pages like groups, Facebook pages, Facebook groups, Facebook communities, or even stuff like Reddit, right? There are specific groups and channels where you can just basically interact with people. You can find out so much more on anything that you're interested about. So if you're looking towards auditing, and if you join the auditing channels, the groups, you understand how the auditing life is about, what are the things that they do, what do they look forward to in their auditing roles and jobs, right? If you're interested in consulting, there are consulting communities, and there's a very mixed bag of feedback and reactions depending on the companies or the projects that they're in. It's always very valuable information that you can get from them. And all of this information can potentially be a game changer for you. Maybe if you hear about a project that you never knew anything about, and hey, this is something that I would like to really get myself involved in. So you never know, right? And networking usually does more good than harm. So don't restrict yourself. Just get out there, put yourself out there, and just see, where you fit in the scheme of things. Okay, so basically those are the 5 questions that I believe for every fresh graduates that are looking to start working, they should see if they have the right answers to all of these questions that I've posed. And of course, for the next episode, I will be diving deep into the interview process, because this interview process is just so complicated, so complex, that I think it deserves an own episode of its own, and I just don't want to drag on this episode any more longer. So look forward to that. If you have any questions, do feel free to leave us a comment or feedback on Instagram or YouTube. Just look for us at Hello Cannot Podcast. Alright, so until next episode, take care and please stay safe, guys.